Gulf of America was calm that night. Too calm, as though the ocean itself had stilled in anticipation. The only sound was the occasional slap of water against the hull, a whisper in the dark, speaking in a tongue I did not wish to understand. I stood alone on the deck, breathing in the salt, heavy air, my hands still slick with sweat, my heart hammering its panicked rhythm. At my feet lay the captain, motionless, his face frozen in that final moment of shock and fury. I had not meant to kill him, not at first. A quarrel over money, over respect, over 1,000 grievances that had built like barnacles on the hull of my mind. A shove, a moment of blind rage, the dull crack of his skull against the iron rail, and then silence. There was no turning back. I heaved his lifeless body overboard, watching as the dark water closed over him, accepting him without hesitation. There was no struggle, no final gasp, just the quiet gulp of the sea, as though it had been waiting for him all along. I exhaled, steadying myself. The deed was done. The ocean had taken him, and that should have been the end of it. But the night had other plans. I wiped my hands on my shirt and turned toward the console. The sooner I put this vessel in motion, the sooner I could fabricate a story. A sudden accident, a man lost to the current, a tragedy no one could have prevented. I turned the key. The engine did not respond. I tried again, more forcefully. Nothing. Just the hollow, mechanical click of a starter that refused to engage. Impossible. The boat had been running smoothly all day. Fuel was full. No electrical failures. Nothing that should have stopped it dead like this. I checked the wires, the fuses, the fuel lines. Everything was as it should have been. And yet, the boat would not move. A breeze should have carried me, at least set me adrift. But the water was unnaturally still. I was no longer simply floating. I was held. The air grew thick with a damp, cloying heat, pressing against my skin like a second, unwelcome presence. And then, the fog. It did not creep in, as mist does in the early morning. It fell, a great wall of white, swallowing the horizon, smothering the stars, reducing the world to a dim, suffocating blur. My fingers tightened around the wheel, though I had no control now. The radio flickered to life with a burst of static. A voice, faint, garbled, indecipherable, echoed through the empty cabin. I pressed the receiver to my ear. The voice became clearer. Not a distress signal, not a warning. It was my own voice. Repeating the excuse I had planned to tell the authorities, word for word, I dropped the receiver, bile rising in my throat. That was when I saw it. A glow appeared in the mist. Not the warm, golden light of another ship, but a sickly, blue-white radiance. A vessel loomed ahead, drifting through the fog, slow and deliberate. Its silhouette was unmistakable. It was my boat. The same name painted on the side. The same building. But I changed, ruined. Its wood swollen and rotting. Its rails lined with thick, barnacle-crusted growths. Water poured from its deck, as though it had been pulled from the depths moments ago. I felt something rising in my chest. Dread, panic, a terrible certainty that whoever was piloting that ship was watching me. Then, the figure appeared. Standing at the helm, motionless, his dripping clothes hanging from his frame like a burial shroud. The captain. I staggered back, gripping the rail. This was a hallucination, a trick of the mind, a nightmare given form. But the longer I stared, the harder it was to deny. The man before me, the man I had killed, was real. His face was the same, but his skin had taken on the pallor of something that had spent too long beneath the waves. His eyes, though, they were wrong, glowing like the fiery embers of hell. He stepped forward, his boots slapping wetly against the deck. I watched, transfixed, as he raised a hand, not in accusation, not in anger, but in silent command. And beneath my feet, the boat began to sink. The water rose swiftly, sloshing over my boots, pulling at my legs with an unnatural force. I fought against it, scrambling for the radio, the emergency flares, but I already knew the truth. There was no escape. The boat was going down, pulled by an unseen weight, dragged into the black, bottomless abyss below. The captain stood unmoving, watching me with that same dreadful calm. The dark water licking at his waist, his chest, his throat, until he was gone. And then, so was I. Morning came, and the gulf lay still, its surface betraying nothing of the night before. The boat drifted into the dock, silent and unhurried, as if guided by an unseen hand. It moved too smooth, too steady, as if it belonged to the water now. The captain stepped off. His boots touched the dock, dry as bone. A few men muttered, exchanging uneasy glances. A boat that returns without its crew is a cursed thing. One old fisherman turned his head and spat into the sea, whispering a prayer under his breath. Someone finally spoke. "Where's your deckhand?"